Okay, one more time. Hello everybody, welcome back to 47 and Counting. My name is Gray from the 8-Bit Garden System. Fronting is Soul. I use she, her pronouns. That will be on screen, one of these sides here. If you can't remember, otherwise Gray, they, them is fine. I forgot I don't show my face. Anyway,
And
yeah, I'm just
I
gonna
have to
get
crop
right
that
into
so
it.
the
The
angle's
idea is a
gonna
mix,
change.
but bag, whether you like it or not. It isn't all bad and it isn't all good. It is what it is, kind of. And I want to talk about 5 things about DID that I can appreciate in one way or another, and 5 things that I really fucking can't. So, yeah, I'm just gonna get started with the first benefit, if you want to call it. You don't have to call it that. You can call it whatever you want. But number 1 is just that you are never alone. This also gets into the first drawback, but I'll get into that in a minute. Essentially, there's always someone around, whether it's passive influence, co-fronting, etc. You're never just like completely on your own. And that has largely been a good thing for our system, especially when we have a suicidal ideation alter fronting. Stephanie is really good to have around. She is, we call her the overseer. She is around 24/7 co-fronting, or we say she's in the passenger seat. And she's kind of like a voice of reason type figure. She doesn't actually front very often, but she's around all the time, and she's what connects our memory for the most part. And I don't know where we would be without Stephanie. I really don't. I have no idea. I think we would be in a horrible spot. I think things would be a lot worse than they currently are. And I'm not saying it's worth having DID. What I'm saying is I have DID, and thus I have Stephanie, and I'm really grateful for that. That does not equal I am grateful for DID. If you don't understand that, that's not my problem. But yeah, number 1 drawback is also that you are never alone. That gets exhausting. Feeling like you need to put on a show all the time or explain yourself. And so I feel like as a system you really need to get used to not feeling the need to explain yourself constantly. Stephanie helps us out with that a lot. Something she says all the time is the only person who is judging you right now is yourself. The only person you need to explain to is yourself. And she means that very broken down, you know, it's not like yourself, like your system, it's like you as the alter. And that helps a lot, but obviously it's not perfect. We very struggle with it. We struggle with it quite a bit. The second thing that I am grateful for in regards to having DID is source mates. I'm going to talk about inner system source mates and outer system source mates. Inner system source mates are source mates that are within your system. So in our case, Benji and Remus and Logan are all technically source mates. Jeremy, Ethan, and kind of Waylon are all source mates. Source mates are people who are from your source. So if you're an introject, if you're a fictive, and then someone else is a fictive, like, because Benji is a fictive of Virgil Sanders from Sanders Sides, and Remus is a fictive of Remus Sanders. They're from the same source, so they're source mates, etc. There is no relationship quite like a good source mate relationship. And I'm not saying just because you're source mates you have this relationship, because that's not true at all. But when you're like close with someone, and like you're close with them as systems, like very intertwined close to someone, and you have a source mate and you're on the same page of what that means and what you expect from each other, if anything, which usually you shouldn't expect anything, but you understand what I'm saying. That is a very special relationship that I don't think singlets could ever understand, and not in like a judging way. Like, you don't need to like feel bad about it or anything. Like, is just so particular. And I feel like for our system, inner system source mates are not as special as outer system source mates. So like, for example, Eddie and Waylon have the most special relationship, Jeremy and Traeger. I've just never seen love quite like that, I guess. And it's not like necessarily better, it's not necessarily worse than any other given type. I've just never seen it like that before. So after the second benefit, I would like to talk about the second drawback, which is shattered identity and usually memory. This is the obvious that comes with having DID. It's kind of exhausting. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to be constantly shifting and never stuck in place and never nailed down. And then the memory thing is just fucking annoying. Like, we don't have traditional, like, DID movie amnesia, but according to our roommates, we have a lot more amnesia than we think we do. Which, yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Most systems have more amnesia than you think you do. But yeah, it sucks. It's hard to keep up with things. It's hard to remember things. It's hard to focus on things. It's hard to stay committed to things. It's not fun. Going right along to the third benefit, which is focused on system littles and child alters and age regression, which I would like to talk about therapeutic age regression, which is one of the 4 subsets. Angel Lim or Leah has a really great video about the psychology behind age regression, which I think is applicable, though not one-to-one, to system littles. She's talking about age regression as a singlet and as a symptom of PTSD or complex PTSD, whereas I'm talking about age regression as a symptom of being a DID system. So it's not completely one-to-one, but it is a very good video that I found very insightful. And in it, Leah talks about therapeutic age regression, which is one of the 4 subtypes, in which you use age regression as a type of therapy. For example, you are playing with your toys and it's rewiring your brain, allowing you to relive that childhood that you didn't get. A benefit of having child alters is that you can very directly interact with your inner child in a way that singlets and or plurals without child alters struggle to do. So I guess this one is more specific to systems who have child alters, but you understand. But this is something you can do without being a system, without being an age regressor. Leah's video is very applicable to any kind of inner child healing. You just have to think about it. Anyway, the third drawback, which I like to think mirrors therapeutic age regression, is trauma, because trauma can cause symptomatic and or involuntary age regression. And yeah, if you don't know, DID is a trauma-formed disorder. If you think you have DID and you don't think you have trauma, you probably just don't remember your trauma. And it's very harmful to spread the narrative that DID can exist without trauma, because it just can't. So if you are in a position where you are questioning if you are plural but you don't think you have trauma, I really implore you to chew on that. Talk with people you trust. And don't dig in any way that's not going to be helpful for you. But please consider not spreading the narrative that DID can exist without trauma. That being said, if you're watching this and you are a system, you definitely have trauma, and it's not fun. It's definitely the biggest drawback of DID in my opinion. We have alters like Benji who are constantly reliving their trauma every time they front, anytime they're active in the inner world. We have alters like Waylon who can escape from it at points, usually through age regression for Waylon specifically, but are generally very affected by our trauma. But then we have mood boosters, we have neutrality holders like myself who just don't really care that much. That being said, it's not necessarily a good thing that we all see our trauma so differently, because we can be so divided, and we're not supposed to be, you know. We need to function. We're going for functional multiplicity, which, if you don't know, there are generally 2 streets you can go down when healing your DID, which is functional multiplicity and final fusion. Final fusion is trying to fuse as many alters as you can and living as close to a singlet life as you can. If I understand that correctly, please correct me if that's wrong. Functional multiplicity is exactly what it sounds like, trying to be functional in your multiplicity, not trying to fuse too many alters or not make that the main goal. And functioning, that's the key word, functional multiplicity. So that being said, I don't remember what I was talking about, something about trauma. I don't even remember. Number 4, the benefits. No one understands you like specific headmates do. I want to start this by saying I am not blind to my privilege of having a system that generally can work things out. We don't generally get along, okay? We have a lot of arguments day to day, but we can generally work things out. And I am not blind to my privilege there. However, we have this privilege because we've worked really fucking hard. So it can coexist, basically. That being said, I know not every system experiences this, but this is based off my experience, and no one will ever understand us in the way that Stephanie does. Which also brings me into the next drawback. No one understands us like Stephanie does. Not even our partner. Because it's just not possible, because they're not in our head. And that is kind of bittersweet. Because I know that I will never understand my fiance in ways that their headmates understand them. And that's bittersweet to me as well. But yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just kind of happy that the situation exists. And then the last one I'm talking about is various triggers. There are positive and negative triggers. I'm specifically talking about triggers into the front. Triggering someone into the front can be done intentionally and safely if you utilize positive triggers. That being said, something that triggers Waylon to the front is dysphoria. That is not a positive trigger. We are not going to try to give ourselves a dysphoria just to get Waylon to front. However, a positive trigger of Waylon's is watching Bluey, which will probably get him regressed, but it'll get him there. So that is something that we could utilize that will bring him to the front in a way that is happy and significant in a good way. That being said, you can't always control what triggers you encounter. There are times negative triggers happen and it's shit, and you know, it really makes a mess of things. But that being said, it is a very powerful tool to have positive triggers. We've very honed in on learning how to control who comes in and out of the front. We obviously can't do it perfectly because that's impossible, but especially with Stephanie around, it's good. It's easier to be able to largely decide, okay, this person would be helpful right now, let's positively trigger this person in. Okay, you're not really helping right now, let's try to switch you out, you know. And yeah, all of that being said, DID is a mixed bag, and if there's anything else you want to talk about, let me know. My name is Sol. See you next time.